Welcome everybody. Welcome to the last of the Open Pedagogy Lightning Talks, which have been part of the University of Alberta's Open Education Symposium this week. That's been happening as part of Open Education Week. These lunchtime talks have been planned for quite a while now, and they've been in part of a larger partnership between the University of Alberta, the University of Calgary, and Thompson Rivers University. I'm Carolyn Ives from Thompson Rivers University, and I'm one of the moderators today. Barbara Brown from the University of Calgary is the other moderator. Barb, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, I'm Barb Brown, and I'm from the Workland School of Education at the University of Calgary, and delighted to be co-moderating with Carolyn. And maybe I'll just take this opportunity as well to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region, where I'm located in southern Alberta in Canada, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy. And also the city of Calgary is home to Nation Métis of Alberta Region 3. Welcome, everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Barb. I'll be introducing speakers, and Barb will be monitoring the chat and giving time prompts to speakers at 5 minutes and at 1 minute. Before we begin, I'd also like to start by acknowledging that Thompson Rivers University is located on the traditional lands of the Tecumseh and the Takal within Secwepemcúlecw, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc people. Our region also extends the territories of the St'át'imc, Inkakla'pamux, Nuu-Hulk, Chilcotin, Kakal, and Syilx people. I'm from Treaty 6 territory, where the University of Alberta is located, so I'm very grateful to be an uninvited guest here in beautiful Secwepemcúlecw. I'm also really grateful that you're all here today, and if you have a moment, take a moment to acknowledge the lands you're on in the chat. So we have 4 talks today in 1 hour. So we are really going to take the term lightning talks very literally and move along quickly. So because of this, we're going to hold questions till the end. And as mentioned, we'll be reminding our speakers of time limits through prompts. So I just wanted to explain what we meant when we were talking about open educational practices. So as we indicated in the call for proposals, the purpose of these talks is to create an accessible virtual space for educators and learners to engage in conversations about open educational practices and bring more awareness to opportunities to mobilize them in diverse educational contexts. And so for these talks, we are using Paskevicius's understanding of OEPs, which is teaching and learning practices where openness is enacted within all aspects of instructional practice, including the design of learning outcomes, the selection of teaching resources, and the planning of activities and assessment. OEP engage both faculty and students with the use and creation of open educational resources and support participatory student-directed projects. And so with that in mind, we have 4 wonderful talks for you today. So first up, we have Dawn Bringeland and Danielle Trzaskowski from Thompson Rivers University, who are going to be presenting the integration of leadership, art, and sustainability through community art open curriculum. So welcome, Dawn and Danielle. Thanks so much. And I'm going to stop talking now and let you present.
So we were a part of a group who worked with the United Nations program. We are both in different subject areas. In fact, I teach math. And Dawn mainly teaches leadership. So we got together to create an open education project, and we're really hoping you guys will use part of this or all of it here. So the purpose of our assignment is so that students would gain an understanding of cultural on different levels and analyze the socioeconomic status in their communities. So they will discuss art. They're going to make recommendations about art in their communities and use some math involved in this experience. So basically, it's an intersectionality of humanities, math, and art in our community, as we were saying. So we will have a link at the end where you can go through all of this yourself. So we had some critical players, and Dawn, luckily, knows Daryl Anderson, who is world known for his desire to share art with not only the United States, but other countries as well. We actually had he was nice enough to create a video for us. So it goes through all of the art that he's done in many different places and kind of gives people an idea, the students, of what we're getting at when it comes to art. So next. Another key player was Sir Kenneth Robinson. He looks at things from a different perspective. So we have students watch his TED Talks that kind of talk about how schools could be killing the creativity of students. And a third one, Earl, we have them watch video and also like look up text information about, is someone who brings the really tough questions about poverty in the US and, is that related to art and creativity and so forth. So we create a project. This here says 3 projects. The first 2 are actually included in the entire project. If you would like to look at our project, change it in any way, please do. But just to give you a little quick thing, here is our project. This is all the background information. We basically have students go into the community after they've gone through all the background information we were discussing. They find art. In the US, we have them like go to the census and use their data about the community. We then have students give out a survey, which I will show you in a second. So this survey, they can stand in front of the art and collect the survey information from people walking by. They can email it out. They can, print it out and then type in the information later to collect data. And then we have them do a lot of data analysis using the math. And then finally, at the end, we have them reflect upon what they found in the community and even make any recommendations that they might think might help their community. With the survey, I do have a link at the top. So I copied this survey for every student individually, so they all have their own survey. Because once all the information is typed into their survey, you can see in the bottom left corner, like this person had 22 responses at the time. So they could click on the 22 responses and immediately it already gives them all of these graphs, data and information according to their responses. Then if you go over to the right here, that little green box that has the cross on it, if they just click there in their survey, it prints out an enormous spreadsheet in Excel with all of their data as well. So they can do, anything they want pretty much with that data. And then finally, basically what we have them do, we created this web page. So this is great. We have them go to the map. Now they will drop a pin and they upload a picture of their art that they found in the community. And then they write a little snippet about it, and then they can look all over, the country or world or whatever and see what other people are doing. So far, I'm in the United States and Maryland. Dawn is in Canada. And so we can see on the map, once they enter their password here, you can see all of our students' drops of their art, all, starting all over the world. So we hope that we continue and people use this and all over, the continent and so forth, they will see more and more art. So here's some examples. This student found where people were painting parking spots. So this would pop up. You can click on our map. And this is another one that was in Vancouver that Dawn is going to get ready to talk about specifically right now.
Thank you, Danielle. As Danielle explained, the project is quite comprehensive. There's actually the 3 projects and they form a hierarchy, but you can choose each one of them independently or you can do all of them together. So I'm just going to quickly go over one of the projects that was the students did. And this particular group of students looked at a whole pile of different art. And so they looked at the East Van Cross, they looked at A Million Summers. So they went through the whole Lower Mainland looking for art pieces that sort of spoke to them. And here's some other examples here. Now, ultimately, they decided on the East Van Cross. And our definition of art is quite open. It could be graffiti, it could be impromptu. It doesn't have to be a commissioned piece of art. And so they were looking for art that had a meaning, not only to themselves that they were curious about, but also to the community. So the East Van Cross, it dates back to the 1950s. The sense is that it might have originally reflected a large immigrant Catholic population in the area. It became kind of a rugged symbol of the community. It still stands there very proud and strong. And they then have to describe the art. And as Daniel said, they do a survey, and all of the surveys, all of the readings, all of the links are provided because we didn't want students having to spend a whole pile of time doing literature reviews and everything else. So we actually provided it all, and it's quite comprehensive. I'd be happy if they read 25% of them because they would get a good sense. And the readings talked about leadership, global mindset, sustainability, social justice, humanities, and art, and how did they intersect within a community. So then they had to go on and summarize the results, and they had a very a cross-section. They had older representatives and they had younger representatives who participated in the survey. And this is a result of their data collection. And here is a cross-section of the demographics. So they had 70% male, 30% female. They looked at income. They looked at how much art was visible. So in this particular community, 75% of the visible art was sculptures, then 70% graffiti, and it sort of went down. And then they looked at what role does art play in their community, or does art play a role? And 80% said yes, what have you. The importance of art form in the community was most murals and sculptures were the most important, and the least important were the performance arts. I think this slide is really interesting because it talks about the top 3 statements that both the respondents agree and disagree with about art and culture. For those that agree, statement A, arts and culture have the ability to address a wide range of community concerns and contribute to the positive transformation of a neighborhood. And then the disagree. We just have 1 minute left, Danielle, so we'll have to swoop through this. And then they had some respondents that were neutral. The students were then asked to reflect on it from a social justice point of view, a community leadership point of view, and also from their own learnings point of view. And then they had to create some policy actions, make some recommendations around policy with art and youth. And it was interesting because they really felt, based on the respondents, that art was losing ground in the education system, K to 12. And so then it also lost ground in the community. And it was meaning making for a number of different, from a number of different perspectives. And then they talk about different recommendations they were making as a result of this experience. This particular group took the assignment to heart and came away with reflections that for themselves, that they were going to get more involved in the community. They were going to be more proactive in making meaning and sort of looking at things from multiple perspectives, which is what we hope they would do. So what we hope you do is access the tiny URL. The whole project is there. We would like to see that map populated over the whole world, and then look at what it means. Look at how art affects the community. We can see just in the very small projects that were done that different art reflects the socioeconomic status of the community, or seems to. And so the more participants we have in this, the more we can possibly do in terms of connecting those dots between those subject areas.
So thanks so much for that. Next up, we have Dr. Elena Antoniadis from Red Deer Polytechnic, and she's going to present on research on open pedagogy practices and student engagement. So welcome, Elena.
So welcome, everyone. It's an honor to be here among educators who are putting equity at the center of their teaching practices, as I attempt to do the same. Okay, so I'm a faculty member at Red Deer Polytechnic teaching psychology. I teach introductory and senior level courses. And for the last 18 months, I've had the privilege and honor to conduct a pilot study that involves the integration of openly licensed and freely available educational resources in the introductory psychology courses I teach. So this presentation divides into 5 parts. I will briefly speak on the research that I've done to integrate openly licensed content, on the instructional design that I've undertaken in support of that, the individualized learning pathways that the content aims to allow for, the course aims to allow for, the inquiry-based learning that is integrated in the course, and also to gauge student engagement and their perceptions around this initiative and their learning experience as a whole. Another goal is to look at their academic success in the course and how they meet learning outcomes. So I would like to preface this by saying that the movement dates back to about 2 decades ago. I was inspired by the movement by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that was the first institution to publish all the educational materials for its undergraduate and graduate level courses online, freely and openly available to anyone, anywhere. This initiative ushered in the open educational resource movement, and through advanced digital technologies, this initiative continues to increase access to education while working to mitigate the financial barriers that too often limit student success. So as I mentioned, since the fall of 2020, I have integrated open educational resources and introductory psychology courses. The content is housed on the NOBA Learning Project website and has been integrated into our learning resource management, which is Blackboard, and it grants access to openly licensed and free textbook material to all students enrolled in the course. The NOBA website is part of the Diner Educational Fund, and the Diner Educational Fund has 3 main goals. Firstly, to serve the student by reducing the financial burden and providing access to free educational content. Secondly, is to present material written by a collection of experts and authorities in the field. The organization financially supports faculty's release from teaching workload at their institutions, freeing up the time needed to author a chapter in their area of expertise. And thirdly, to support open education practices. Ed and Carol Diner, who are the founders, have built this platform to provide instructors an area to customize educational content to suit their needs better, their teaching needs better. So indeed, for my courses, I selected a collection of thematic modules mirroring the chapters that are common to all introductory psychology textbooks and integrated them into the course. The next step involved the design of course content, learning materials, and resources for the delivery of the curriculum. For that purpose, I selected the outcomes-based educational model. So instructional design for online, hybrid, or in-class courses requires a deep understanding of existing best practices. Outcomes-based education is a learning framework. It's centered on the learner's experience. It manages a curriculum around the accessible and measurable proficiency of a specific skill or behavior. Learning initiatives are expressed as actionable statements that facilitate students' understanding of the end goal and identify measurable milestones. Related simulations and case studies provide learners with a realistic scenario that embodies the concept. They can be presented in learning interventions to illustrate an abstract concept and to assess learning. I also used another important design, which is the backward model. The backward model is a framework that provides structure and organization to elements of the course and its design. Using this model has facilitated the instructional content and delivery method to optimize the cognitive load for the learner. The objectives targeted serve as the starting point and inform the design of the learning experiences. Furthermore, goals specific to the module or the unit designate the assessments and activities that support the learning. My experience has been that this theory enables a better understanding of the learning experience and supports better educational practices. I also incorporated inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning is as much a pedagogical philosophy as a set of practical strategies. While inquiry-based learning appears in different formats All formats place the learners in the center of the experience where they take on the roles of investigators and problem solvers. So in my course, students were presented with case studies that were given in the form of open access videos, and they analyzed these case studies. So the learner was invited to connect elements of the narrative in the case study to relevant parts of the curriculum. So in doing so, the learner explores the conditions and context in which the theory is applicable. And I want to mention that analysis of case studies is a form of inquiry-based learning, and it's in one of its earlier versions, it appeared at McMaster University Medical School, where entering students analyze as case studies for their program. So the goal of the analysis of students' academic success is to see if students are meeting the learning outcomes in the course that integrates openly licensed materials. And so to do so, I will analyze the cognitive complexity of their compositions. So this is my next goal. So taking the interactive writing in this assignment is reinforced by formative feedback that aids to guide assimilation of the new knowledge. And the interactive writing invites in-depth analysis of a case study and facilitates insightful connections to the curriculum. So I will analyze their compositions for the level of cognitive complexity. I did carry out a survey. Participation was voluntary. This was in the first term of my courses, where there across sections, there was a total of 154 students. Participation was not incentivized by any points, bonus points, or anything of that nature. It was purely voluntary, and 32 of the 32 students participated, and they were asked to rate these statements. Clear to learning outcomes are provided at the start of each unit. So the majority seemed to agree. They were asked, the instructional material and lectures provides enough information to address those learning outcomes. The majority seemed to agree. The course textbook is easily accessible via Blackboard. The majority seemed to agree. The course textbook adequately reflects instructional material presented in lectures. And again, the majority seems to agree. The unit quizzes and discussion postings apply to the content presented in the lectures. The majority seem to agree. Peer learning opportunities exist for in-class discussions as well as the discussion boards. This is where there's a little bit of variety in the response and something to examine further. The instructor provides informative feedback on the discussion postings to a marking rubric and individualized comments. Again, there's majority seem to agree, but again, there's a little bit of variability. I looked, all the student feedback was very informative, and for that, I'm very grateful. And I took some comments around the case study. So case study assignments. So the application videos, case study simulation, cinematic chronicles allow me to explore treatments, therapies, and application of psychological theory into daily practice. Another is the use of case-based strategies in the application videos promotes my understanding of abstract theories, enables me to use the course material in order to explain real-life situations. Another is the course uses multiple means of representation, application videos, slides with images, recordings, discussion board to provide various ways to access and engage with course materials and information. And just a general comment around the use of OERs. Having OERs is a fantastic option for students like me who have a hard time paying for expensive textbooks. And so the take home, I think one of the take home messages from all this is that students seem to perceive that the content is relevant, that it aligns with the learning outcomes that are provided to the students, but they would like to have more opportunity for peer learning. And so I will integrate that in future iterations of this course. And so I wanted to say, I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. I wanted to say thank you to all the students who signed up for my courses and all the support at the Polytechnic, from the library, from administrators. Thank you.
Amanda, Walkruk from the University of Alberta is going to speak about open licensing and an infrastructural element of OER. Now, Amanda's prepared a video that Barb is going to play for you, but Amanda's present to answer any questions you have about her talk, so she will be available for that.
My name is Amanda Walkruk, and I'm the Copyright and Scholarly Communications Librarian here at the University of Alberta. Obviously, I cannot provide legal advice, but we can certainly talk about how legal licenses shape the open education movement and the development of OER. But first, back to the basics. What is an OER? Well, it's any teaching, learning, or research materials that meet these 5 requirements. It's something you can retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. These are things you cannot do with traditional all rights reserved learning materials like copyright protected commercial textbooks, unless of course you are leaning on a statutory exception to infringement or are acquiring permissions directly from the rights holder. At its core then, creating and using OER is fundamentally about sharing. And both the government and our courts have something to say about how we can or cannot share materials that are protected by copyright. The Copyright Act makes it clear that copyright protection exists as soon as an original work in a fixed format is created. And that protection lasts until at least half a century after the death of the creator. After that, the work is said to enter the public domain, which means it is no longer protected by copyright at all. Now, when the government talks about copyright protection, they basically mean the right to share the work in almost any way that you can think of. And under copyright law, only the rights holder can share a protected work with some small but important exceptions. Those exceptions are beyond the scope of this lightning talk, but we can certainly chat about them in the Q&A if you'd like, and I've linked to related resources later in the presentation. For our purposes today, however, it's important to remember that only the rights holder has the legal right to be able to tell others if it's okay to share the textbooks or slide decks or whatever it is that they've created without the need to ask permission or make a payment. So if I write a textbook or an article, or even take a cell phone pic, and you share it without my permission, that's copyright infringement, unless I've assigned terms of use that are consistent with the way you are sharing my work. And those terms of use can be in the form of an open license. If the terms of that open license are consistent with the 5 R's, then we would say that the work is an OER. So here's another way to say this. This is the UNESCO definition of an OER. So that brings us to this question. How do students and educators know when it's okay to copy, remix, and share a copyright protected work? Because that's at the heart of sharing and OER. Well, we rely on the rights holder to tell us that something is OER. And the most common way to do that is by assigning an open license. This author has assigned the CC BY and C license to this book. Open licenses grant permission to use a copyright protected work with relatively few or no restrictions and can allow for uses consistent with the 5 R's. Open licenses are called open because they are between the rights holder and the world at large, whereas closed licenses are normally between listed parties, so specific organizations or people. Creative Commons licenses are the most common type of open licenses for OER, so let's take a closer look at what that is. Creative Commons is actually 3 different things. It's a global network and movement with a community of practitioners that include legal experts, librarians, educators, policy advocates, and others. These people work together to make sure that the licenses remain relevant and up to date. Creative Commons is also a nonprofit organization dedicated to building a globally accessible public commons of knowledge and culture. And finally, the legal tools themselves. Creative Commons provides a set of licenses that make it easy for rights holders to share their works with the public under more permissive terms than that default all rights reserved. Now we're going to spend a bit of time on this slide. I apologize for that. But it's important to know that there are 6 licenses and a public domain designation as part of the suite of legal tools offered by Creative Commons. That public domain designation, found at the top of the freedom scale at the top right, tells the world that the rights holder has made that work available without any copyright restrictions at all. So they've essentially waived their rights in this work. The next license down on the freedom scale is the CC BY, which stands for Creative Commons Attribution. If you see a work with a CC BY license, you can essentially do whatever you want with it, so long as you provide attribution. All the CC licenses require attribution, which basically means providing the user with the title of the work, the creator's name, and links back to both the source and the CC license. The next two licenses include SA and NC elements. NC stands for non-commercial and makes it clear that the work should not be used for commercial purposes. SA stands for share alike and triggers when you decide to share an adaptation of a work. So if you modify a work with an SA license, you must assign the same license to your new work if you choose to share it. All of the licenses we've discussed so far are OER compatible because they meet the requirements of the 5 Rs. However, the ND or no derivatives license element does not support the redistribution of a remixed work. So a work with an ND element is not an OER. It might be available in an open access environment, but it's not an OER. That's because the ND element makes it clear that adaptations of a work assigned this license cannot be shared. So if I assign a CC BY NC ND license to this presentation, you would not be able to adapt it and share it as your own presentation without first asking me for permission to do so. If you did, that would be in breach of the license. But don't worry, I haven't done that. I've assigned a CC BY license to this work, which means it is OER, and you can adapt and reuse it as you see fit, so long as you provide me with attribution. Now, the CC license details can be found on the Creative Commons website, so I won't spend too much time on them here. But I did want to include a screenshot to give you something to reference, and also to make it clear that these are very much plain language licenses that should be easy for anyone to work through and understand. However, there are nuances that are covered in the wiki pages provided by Creative Commons if you need more information. Okay, so again, we rely on the rights holder to tell us how we can use their works without the fear of copyright infringement. When it comes to OER, that is best done with a compatible open license like the CC BY NC, which the author has assigned in this case. They've also made it clear to us that there might be some items in this book that aren't covered by that open license. These are usually images or charts that the author does not actually hold the rights for. Maybe they're including them because they obtained special permission to use those items in this OER, or maybe they're relying on a fair dealing assessment. That information should be clear to the reader. Bringing us to the next question, how do OER developers know when and how to share their own or others' copyright protected works? Well, this is a question that leads to a whole bunch of other questions about, you guessed it, legal rights. For works, these are legal rights for works that the author has created themselves, and also for works that they do not hold the rights for, also known as third-party content, like the examples we were just talking about. Now, we don't have time to go into detail about all of these points, but I did cover them in last year's Open Education Week Symposium hosted by CTL. So I've linked it here for you if you do need more information about developing OER. While this process can feel complicated, it doesn't have to be, and it certainly doesn't need to be a barrier for the creation of OER. One thing that is really simple, however, is the assignment of the CC license itself. After you choose a license, you simply add the CC button to your article or book or whatever it is that you're assigning license to, with a statement and a link back to the license you selected. There's no charge or registration formality to assign a CC license. When it comes to CC licenses, it's really just about willingness. There are no barriers to assigning one if you are the rights holder, which makes this infrastructural element very easy to implement. So in summary, copyright law dictates who has the right to share protected works. Open licenses are assigned by the rights holder and grant permission to use a copyright protected work with few or no restrictions. The copyright status of a work does not change when a standard open license is assigned by the rights holder or someone licensed to do so. And finally, Creative Commons licenses are the most common OER open licenses. Now, also important is the my attempt to continue to use CP style to, in writing, use the appropriate form of license. It's a bit of a lost cause, but I like to share it when I can. It's a Canadian thing. Another Canadian thing is the opening up copyright instructional modules created right here at the University of Alberta. There are dozens of instructional videos available to you as OER through the website listed here, including modules related to open licensing and Creative Commons. The Copyright Office at the University of Alberta also has some information about developing OER on its website, so that's provided for you here. And finally, happy to take questions, in the Q&A. Thanks for this opportunity to participate in CTL 2022 OE Week.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Amanda. Very helpful video. And for anybody who's interested, Amanda's already shared a copy of the video in the chat because Verena had asked for it for a course. So if you have students who would like to learn more about it, you can borrow that video as well. So last up, we have one more presentation with our wonderful co-moderator, Barb Brown, and Verena Roberts, Michelle Jacobson, Christy Harrell, Nicole Nutzling, and you said Mia's not here today? Okay, great. And they're going to be talking about hashtag ethics co-design of graduate student press book. So welcome and take it away.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. And thank you to the team that's here today to help co-present. We're going to be talking about work that we did as part of a graduate program called Leading and Learning in a Digital Age. It's a 4-course master's certificate at the University of Calgary and the Workland School. And so often students will sign up for these 4 courses and then they will ladder the 4 courses into another program. And if they complete the 3 years, then they can accomplish a Master of Education interdisciplinary degree. And as part of this program, we decided to start by incorporating an assignment that students would start to draft a chapter of a book and create an OER, an open educational resource. And then we started to embed open educational practices within the program. And now it's become part of the program where the students start to learn about it in the first course as they work through the program through to the 4th course. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jacobson, who is going to talk a little bit about the open educational practices that are used. And I would also like to note that I noticed in the participant list that one of our former students, Joel Templeman, is also here. And you will notice he is one of the co-authors in one of the books. So welcome, Joel. Over to you, Michelle.
We're really excited about this research because we do draw upon contemporary research on open educational practices in enacting the 4 commitments as well as evaluating them through cycles of our research. And those are relationships and the ways in which students build relationships with each other, as well as how they build relationships with their instructor. We're also focused on identifying and supporting and fostering clarity in the co-design process and supporting learners' voice and choice in negotiating their learning pathways. We focus on knowledge building and sharing knowledge through communication in all of our assignments, tasks, and processes in which we provide formative and summative feedback. And we're also looking at ways throughout to foster sustainability of the learning beyond the course through extended learning networks. Back over to you, Barb.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Okay, and so the next slide I'm going to turn over to Christy, who's going to talk a little bit about the books that were put together. Go ahead, Christy.
Thanks, Barb. So I'm Christy Hurl. I'm a librarian at the University of Calgary and have been really privileged to work with this team on both volumes of this book. So both of the EdTech Press books are hosted through Open Education Alberta, which we've talked about throughout this week. It's an instance of Pressbooks that's hosted by the University of Alberta. So I am the kind of representative for Open Education Alberta at the University of Calgary campus. So through that role, I was responsible in provisioning accounts, providing a little bit of orientation and training to the Pressbooks platform, and providing guidance around copyright and licensing. So a good jump off from Amanda's excellent video. So for this project, this included providing some resources for students to help them think about their rights and responsibilities as both consumers and creators of information resources, which I think is one of the most powerful things about co-design and open pedagogy. We also have a memorandum of understanding with students to help them kind of think it through and really formalize those rights to ensure that they make an informed choice about sharing their intellectual property publicly. And all students in the course had the opportunity to opt in or opt out of this open sharing. Also did some accessibility checking at the end of the book to make sure that we were meeting basic accessibility guidelines and sort of technical support as required. So for both iterations of the book, students did most of their writing and editing outside of Pressbooks, whether it was in Word or Google Docs, and they got feedback. And we had significant support from the entire team, as well as a professional copy editor to get the content into Pressbooks in a more finalized fashion. So we did have a lot of support, and there was a lot of iteration and feedback that happened before the chapters made it into this final form. So I think that's it for me. I'll turn it back over to the team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Okay, and so now over to Nicole Nutzing, who is also one of our former students and project member as well, to talk a little bit about the first book that was put together. So over to you, Nicole.
Thank you. So I'm super excited because I was involved as a student during the first book and a research assistant on the second book. So I've got a lot of different hats that I wear in this project. But I would say from a student's perspective, being able to co-design a chapter in a book, the biggest takeaway for me was it was non-disposable. It was an assignment that actually mattered. I wasn't putting all this energy and effort into something that was going to sit and collect dust. It was actually going to go out in the world. And so that opportunity to connect and share my work openly was incredibly engaging and authentic. I had choice in what I decided I wanted to dig into. So that was a big, big motivator. It was scary, but it was also helped push me and push my writing and my academic research skills to the next level. It also enabled me, we used a lot of open participatory activities. And so that allowed me to connect with open networks and connect directly with experts. It's one thing to read an academic article, and it's another to be able to actually reach out and talk to the person who wrote that. So as a student, that was, I can't explain how beneficial that was to my learning in the process.
And thank you, Nicole. And I know that you did a presentation earlier in the symposium and talked a little bit about how this just extended your interests and work in open education, which is fantastic. Thank you, Nicole. And now over to Verena Roberts, the person who really inspired this project. And so go ahead, Verena.
Thank you, Barb. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Volume 2. First of all, I am going to highlight that this is a team collaborative effort. And I remember the moment that I really thought about trying to think about how to develop awareness in using OER on our campus, but then also the experience of open educational practices and really creating a project where we could all work together. That has really made a difference for me because at the beginning I might have felt like the lone wolf, and now I feel like we're howling to the winds, I guess you can say, at the University of Calgary. So Volume 2, I just wanted to highlight the differences in the topics because it's really exciting that Volume 1 was designed before COVID, whereas Volume 2, well, as we well know, before and COVID kind of started in the middle of it, whereas Volume 2, it was throughout COVID from beginning to end. And some of the topics of the chapters, for example, Marcia Steves, I Can't See You, the ethical considerations of web camera use in online environments, and David Loonstra's the use of e-proctoring software at post-secondary institutions, a balanced approach. Or Joel Templeman's The Razor's Edge, How to Balance Risk in Artificial Intelligence, which is AI, machine learning, and big data, really speak to the emerging trends and topics that came out of what was going on in our learning environments during COVID. I have used multiple chapters already in some of the courses that I teach. I've shared these around the world. I know that I've shared them with K-12 districts. And so that's what I'm so excited about. That not only was this a great thing for the students, I think, as Nicole mentioned, but it's a great thing for the world, and it's a great thing for Alberta and Western Canada in particular, because we're able to share some well-researched and informed chapters that can help guide the future of educational technology and open learning in our universities and institutions. So back to you, Barb.
Hey, great. And I'd just like to thank all the members of the team for being here today and helping us present our work.
I have already bookmarked those, so thank you so much for sharing them. Thank you, everybody, for your amazing talks. And thanks so much for joining us this week. And thank you so much, U of A, Cassette, and Chris, for hosting us this afternoon.